It's the turn to develop the TCP server. Now, if I ask the question again, what can I do with the TCP server? Well, you could develop a TCP listener. In fact, we will do something similar in the last module of this course and develop a listener that could interact with the client that executes as a backdoor reverse shell. Also, what you can do is to develop a proxy server that listens for TCP traffic. Another option is to develop your own custom TCP server, such as FTP, Web, SSH, Telnet, or Mail server, and much more. The list doesn't end here, folks. Alright, let's start. First, I will list the files in this directory using the ls command. The program name that we're looking for is tcpserver.py. Let's execute the command with the help argument by adding the help at the end after the application name. All we need for the server to run is to specify the port number. If you omit it, then the application will choose the default number port for you, which is 4444. We don't need to specify the IP address because we will be listening locally to all clients with any IP address. Now it's the time to test our application. As always, you start with the keyword Python, followed by the name of the program and the port number that we want to listen on for the TCP server. As you can see, the server is listening at port 9999 for any connections. I will open a second console and run the port scanner application from the previous demo to connect with our server at port 9999. Check this out. Our server replied back with its version number. I know you're curious at this moment and you want to know how to program this server. You got it. Let's jump into the source code. First, let's start at the top, where we import the libraries. For the TCP server, we need to import 3 libraries. The first one on the top is the socket library. We need this for the TCP server functionalities. And then on the second line, we imported the threading library. For this example, we are going to implement multi-threading techniques for advanced listening functionalities. And the third library is the argparse that gives us the capabilities to parse the arguments entered in the command line. As usual, the entry point of the application is here at the end, where we call the main function. In the main function, the first line, I'm declaring a variable called parser, and I'm instantiating the argument parser object. Also, I'm defining a custom message for the application that will show in case someone typed help in the command line. In the second line, I'm adding the argument for the port number. The type is an integer because the port is a number. After that, I included the help message. And finally, I specified the default port number as 4444. In the next line, I'm declaring the args variable to parse the arguments by calling the parse args function. After that, I'm storing the port number value that was parsed and put it in the port number variable. If you're asking yourself the question, how argparse knows that the name is port? In fact, it's the second argument that we specified here for the port by removing the at first. Finally, we call the start server function and pass the port number as an argument. Now let's see what's inside the start server function. The first line in this function instantiate the socket object. The AFINet means it's an IPv4, and the socket underscore stream means it's a TCP connection. In the second line, we use the bind function to define the port number and the IP address. So what is this weird IP address 0.0.0.0? Well, when the server is using 0.0.0.0, this means that the service is listening on all the configured network interfaces. On the third line, we start listening and we accept only 10 connections. After that, we print a message mentioning that we start listening. Next, we add a while true loop. In other words, it's an endless loop that is listening for incoming connections. Then we start accepting connections using the accept function, and we store the client socket object in the client variable and the port number and the IP address of that client in the address variable. Next, we print the client information. Finally, we start serving clients using the thread function by passing the name of the function, which is serve client, and the list of arguments, which is the client socket object, the IP address, and the port number of the client. Not to forget to start the thread using the start function. Let's jump into the serve client function. The first line is receiving the buffer data from the client. After that, we print the results. In the next line, we send back a response to the client with the version number of the server. Finally, we close the connection. And we're done.